धागे तोड़ लाओ चांदनी से नूर के.
You walk beside Jungkook as you enter the grand dining hall of the John mansion. The chandeliers glisten above you, was casting a warm glow over the room filled with elegantly dressed guests. You're not used to being in places like this, so fancy, so grand. A few months ago, you got married to Jungkook, a very successful yet down-to-earth billionaire, and now you're the part of his glamorous world that you are still trying to fit in. You grew up in a small, simple family where money was always tight, and your family worked hard to make sure everything was taken care of. Even though life wasn't easy, you were a smart and hardworking person, always trying to make your family proud. But things got tough when your father became very sick, and the medical bills became too much for your family to handle. In the middle of this difficult time, Jungkook, a rich businessman, came into your life with an offer. He suggested a contract marriage. He would help your family with money, and in return, you would marry him. On the outside, it looked like a business deal. Jungkook needed to fix his company's image after a scandal, and marrying someone from a simple background like you would help him look better to the public. What you didn't know was that Jungkook had fallen in love with you long before. He first saw you at a charity event years ago and had been thinking about you ever since. The contract marriage was his way of getting close to you, hoping that one day you would love him back. You agreed to the contract because you wanted to help your family, but after marrying Jungkook, you felt like you didn't belong in his rich and fancy world. People in his life, especially his mother, looked down on you because of your background. They thought you were only with Jungkook for his money, which made things even harder. But Jungkook wasn't like them. He cared deeply about you and wanted to protect you from their harsh words. Even though you thought your marriage was just a deal, Jungkook was determined to show you that he truly loved you, and somewhere you started to fall for him after seeing his care towards you. He's a true gentleman who always tried to make you comfortable, even in situations like these. He always stands by your side, and you're very grateful for that. The moment you step inside, you feel 100 eyes on you, watching, whispering. Jungkook sensed your nervousness and leaned down before whispering softly in your ear. You doing okay? You gave him a small, unsure smile. I'm just trying not to trip over my own feet. He chuckled quietly and squeezed your hand. You look perfect, and don't worry, I'm here. The warmth of his words helped you relax, but you can still feel the weight of everyone's stares. Some people smiled at you kindly as you passed, but others, especially the older women, look at you as if you don't belong here. You hold on to Jungkook's hand a little tighter. Are you sure we should have come? I know your mother doesn't like me much. You said in a low tone, unsure if you should have said that, but you were really feeling out of place. Jungkook's eyes softened as he looked at you. You're my wife. You belong here with me. Don't let anyone make you feel like you don't. He brushed a strand of hair behind your ear. His touch was gentle, protective. You feel a flutter in your chest. Jungkook's care for you has always been real, even if your marriage started as a contract. There were moments like now where his affection felt more than just an agreement. As you moved deeper into the room, some of the guests approached to greet you both. Oh, Jungkook, you are here, and this must be your lovely wife. A woman asked, smiling brightly. You smiled politely, but before you can respond, the woman's eyes trailed over you in a way that made your skin crawl. She's so beautiful, she added, though there was something in her tone that feels more like a judgment than a compliment. Jungkook's grip on your waist tightened just slightly as if to shield you. Yes, she is. We are lucky to have each other, he said, looking at you with a genuine smile that made you smile as well. It all started as a contract marriage, but seeing you guys together, seeing his selfless care and deep love for you, No one can tell it's a contract marriage, not even you. You feel everything as if it's real, as if you're going to be his wife forever. You glanced up at him feeling grateful for the way he stands by you. Even when people doubt or judge you, he never does. The two of you moved on, finding your seats at the large dining table. Jungkook pulled out your chair for you. His hand brushed your back lightly as you sit down. Comfortable? He asked. His voice was just for you. You nodded. I think so. He nodded and sat next to you, letting you know that he's here for you and you don't have to worry about anything else. The dinner began, and for a while everything seems fine. Jungkook talked to you quietly, asking if you're okay, making sure you're not overwhelmed. He knows how out of place you feel at these kind of events, surrounded by so much wealth and power, but he never lets you feel alone in it. Jungkook leaned closer a little so that whatever he say only you can hear. He was trying every possible way to cheer you up so you won't feel nervous or anxious. I hate these kind of parties too. Honestly, I would rather be at home with you watching some bad movie. You can't help but smile at his words. Me too. You whisper back, feeling a little less anxious with him by your side. But then, as dinner progressed, the mood shifted. You felt it before it happened. The air in the room grew colder and you caught Mrs. John, Jungkook's mother, watching you from the head of the table. Her eyes were sharp and you knew she's about to say something unpleasant. So, how are you finding life as Mrs. John? It must be quite the change from where you come from. A small, humble background like yours. Her voice was dripping with sarcasm. Your stomach tightened when all the attention turned to you. You shifted uncomfortably in your seat before looking at her. It's different, but I'm still getting used to it, you said quietly, trying to be polite. Mrs. John's smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm sure it is. I can only imagine how overwhelming it must be to live in a world of wealth and power when you are not used to it. Must be hard to fit in. Some guests exchanged glances, a few whispered to each other. You look down at your plate feeling embarrassed. You know she's trying to make you feel small, to remind you that you don't belong in this world. Your heart tightened. You have always felt like an outsider here, and her words only make it worse. But before you can speak, Jungkook squeezed your hand, offering silent support. I think Mayan is doing just fine. She belongs here as much as anyone. He was polite, but there was firmness in his voice. Mrs. John's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't stop. Oh, I'm sure, but not everyone can just fit into a life of luxury overnight. She took a sip of her wine, then added, some people have to work their whole lives for this, while others, well, they just marry into it. The room went silent. You could feel everyone watching, waiting to see what you'll say. Your throat felt tight. Jungkook's jaw tightened. Mother, that's enough. But Mrs. John wasn't finished. She took another slow sip of her wine, then set the glass down with a soft clink. You know, Jungkook, ever since she arrived, I've noticed a few things missing. The room again went silent. All eyes were now on her. Jungkook frowned. What are you talking about? Mrs. John looked directly at you. Her expression hardened. Jewelry, expensive items, they have been disappearing. And it's funny, none of this started until she moved in. Your heart dropped. She was accusing you of stealing. You shook your head shocked and looked at Jungkook. I didn't. I would never. She cut you off before you say further. Really? Because someone like you coming from nothing might be tempted by all the luxury around here. You probably think you deserve it after marrying into this family. Tears filled your eyes, but you decided to remain strong. You didn't let her accuse you in front of so many people for something you didn't do. I didn't do anything. I didn't steal anything if you're pointing at me. Oh, really? Because before she continued, Jungkook interrupted. He tried to remain calm, but his eyes darkened as he couldn't take in your insult. Mother, don't. Mrs. John leaned forward. Her eyes were sharp as a knife. I'm just saying, Jungkook, you should be careful. Not everyone who looks innocent is as pure as they seem. Tears started dropping from your eyes as it was extremely humiliating, and you never imagined she would go this far just to insult you, all because she's not happy that Jungkook married you. Your hands started to tremble, but before you could say anything, Jungkook stood abruptly, his chest scraped against the floor. That's enough, he said loudly, and his voice echoed through the room. The entire table fell silent. All eyes were on him now, and Mrs. John looked shocked at her son's outburst. Don't ever say that again. Wyan didn't steal anything, and she's not here for my money. You have no right to talk about her like that. Mrs. John looked at him. Her face went pale with shock. Jungkook, I'm only trying to protect you. You don't know what kind of girl she really is. Jungkook shook his head. His eyes were blazing with anger. No, you're wrong. I know exactly who she is. She's the woman I love, and I won't let anyone treat her like this. Your heart swelled at his words and tears pricked at the corner of your eyes. You never expected him to say it so openly, especially in front of his family. You were shocked, but right now your mind was on what his mother accused you of. If you can't accept her, then maybe we don't need to be here. The guests were shocked. Everyone was in shock and amusement. His mother couldn't believe Jungkook didn't fall for her lies and took your side. Jungkook looked at you and grabbed your hand. He was upset and apologetic for how his mother treated you, but he can't stand on a place where his wife can't be respected. Let's go from here. You nodded and stood up before walking away from there, leaving everyone just watching you. His mother clenched her fork tightly. After the tense dinner, Jungkook didn't stop until you both were inside his house. The door clicked shut and the silence was thick between you. You could feel his frustration without him saying a word. He paced back and forth, running his hand through his hair. His face was tight with anger. He finally turned towards you and you could see the guilt in his eyes, even though none of this was his fault. Wyan, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry what my mother said. She had no right. I should have stopped her earlier. You shook your head, feeling a lump in your throat. It's not your fault, Jungkook. She's always treated me like that, but today she went too far, calling me a thief, humiliating me like that in front of everyone. Jungkook's hands trembled slightly as he walked over to you. He looked devastated, as if he carried the weight of everything his mother had said. You don't deserve this. You never have. I should have stopped her right away. I shouldn't have taken you there at all. He took your hand gently. His grip was tight, like he was afraid you would slip away. I swear I won't take you to any family events again. Not while she's there. And I won't go either. I don't care if it's a wedding or a funeral. I'm done with all of them. You could see the hurt in his eyes, the anger that he was holding back. He was upset not just for you, but for himself too. His family had always judged him for marrying someone from a poor background, and now tonight it had all blown up in front of everyone. You took a deep breath, knowing what you had to say next, even though it felt like a stone in your chest. Jungkook, I think we should end this contract. He froze for a moment, staring at you in disbelief. What? No, Wyan, don't say that. I mean it, you replied, trying to keep your voice steady, though your heart was breaking. I don't want to come between you and your mother anymore. I don't want to cause problems in your family. I'm just here for a short time, remember? My father is healthy now. The bills are paid, you have done so much for me. And I'm grateful, but it's time to end this. Jungkook's grip tightened on your hands. His eyes went wide with shock. You really think I would keep you this close to me if I was planning to let you go? Your breath caught in your throat. What do you mean? His eyes softened and he cupped your face gently in his hands. His touch was warm and comforting. Wyan, I didn't marry you just for the contract. I didn't do it just to help your family. I did it because I love you. His voice was low and filled with emotions. You blinked as your heart skipped a beat. What? Jungkook let out a breath, his hands still on your cheeks as if grounding himself. I've loved you for a long time, since the day I saw you at that charity event. Before I even knew anything about you, you were just so real, so kind, and I fell for you. I didn't know how to get close to you, so when I found out you were struggling with your father's medical bills, I thought maybe this was my chance, my only chance to help you, even if it started with a contract. Tears filled in your eyes and you couldn't hold them back, but you never told me. I didn't want to pressure you, he said, brushing away a tear that slipped down your cheek with his thumb. I thought maybe in time you would start to see me in a different way. I wanted you to come to me because you wanted to, not because of the contract. You couldn't believe what you were hearing. All this time you thought he was just doing this out of kindness, out of obligation to the agreement. But now hearing the love in his voice, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, it changed everything. Jungkook, I didn't know, you whispered while your voice trembled. I know, he said softly, pulling you closer and wrapping his arms around you. But I can't let you go, Wyan. Not now, not ever. I love you and I'll protect you from anyone, even my own family. I don't care what they think. Tears were streaming down your face now, your heart overwhelmed by his words. You had never expected this, never imagined he would feel this way. I thought you just wanted to help. I did want to help, but not just for your father. For you, because I couldn't stand to see you struggle. And now I can't stand to see you hurt like this. You pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes, trying to understand everything that was happening. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, just don't leave. Stay with me. I love you, Wyan, and I'm not letting you go. He whispered, his hand cupping the back of your head, pulling you close again. Your heart ached, but it wasn't from the pain of the night anymore. It was from the realization that this man, who you thought was just fulfilling a contract, had cared about you all along. You let out a shaky breath. The words slipped out from your mouth. I love you too. You whispered against his chest, even though your voice was barely audible. Jungkook froze for a moment as if he hadn't heard you right. Then he slowly pulled back to look at you, his face filled with hope. You do? You nodded, wiping your tears away. Yes, I do. I have been trying to fight it because I didn't think this was real, but I love you, Jungkook. A bright smile broke across his face, and without another word, he pulled you into a deep hug, his arms holding you as if he never wanted to let go. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear you say that. He whispered against your hair, his voice was thick with emotion. You buried your face in his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady against yours. For the first time since this whole arrangement started, you felt like you were exactly where you belonged.